What if the quiet truth of life is this, that the rescue you've been waiting for will never arrive? Not because you were forgotten, and not because the world is cruel, but because the most important force in your life has been standing quietly inside you all along. Think about it for a moment. All across nature, no creature waits for permission to survive. A seed does not pause beneath the soil hoping someone will applaud before it grows toward the sun. A young bird does not sit forever on a branch, asking the wind if it feels ready. Yet we humans often sit still for years, sometimes even decades, hoping someone will come to carry us forward. We wait for the perfect opportunity. We wait for someone to recognize our potential. We wait for the moment when everything finally feels certain and safe and clear. But today I want to share something gently with you. Something honest and perhaps a little uncomfortable at first. The life you are waiting for may not begin when someone arrives to save you. It may begin the moment you realize that no one is coming, and that this truth is not cruel at all. In fact, it may be one of the most liberating discoveries you will ever make. You see, many people quietly hold a belief they rarely speak out loud. Deep down, they believe that somewhere in the future, someone will appear who changes everything. A mentor who finally sees their talent, a partner who brings stability and direction, a lucky moment that opens the perfect door at exactly the right time. And because they believe this, they wait. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for clarity. They wait for the day when life somehow gives them permission to begin. But waiting has a strange side effect. The longer we wait, the easier it becomes to keep waiting. Waiting turns into habit, and habits slowly shape the direction of an entire life. What begins as a short pause becomes a pattern, and that pattern quietly builds the walls of a life that feels smaller than it was meant to be. If you look closely at the natural world, you will see a very different pattern. Imagine a quiet beach under a moonlit sky. The air is cool and the waves roll gently against the sand. Beneath that sand, buried for weeks, tiny sea turtles are waiting. They are not waiting for encouragement or instructions. They are not waiting for a perfect moment. They are simply waiting for the moment when instinct whispers that it is time to move. And then one night, something remarkable happens. A tiny turtle breaks through the sand. It has just entered the world. It is small, fragile, and vulnerable. Somewhere far ahead lies the ocean, shimmering in the distance, the place where its life will truly begin. But between the turtle and the sea, there are dangers everywhere. Birds circle overhead searching for an easy meal. The sand stretches out farther than its tiny body seems capable of crossing. The wind pushes against it. The world is enormous, unfamiliar, and full of uncertainty. Yet the turtle does not sit down and wait for someone to carry it. No parent arrives to guide it. No leader appears to show the safest route. There is only instinct and movement. So the turtle begins, slowly, clumsily, determinedly. One small step across the sand, then another and another. Every movement is uncertain, yet every movement brings it closer to the water that will become its home. Nature does not promise rescue. Nature offers something else. It offers opportunity through movement. The creatures that survive are not always the strongest or the most protected. Often they are simply the ones who keep moving. When we observe this pattern across the natural world, it appears again and again. The young eagle must eventually leave the nest even though the sky is vast and frightening. The first moment it spreads its wings, the wind feels unpredictable and powerful. For a brief moment it may fall, wings flapping awkwardly, heart racing. But something extraordinary happens during that fall. The eagle begins to understand the air. The wind that once felt terrifying becomes something it can ride, something it can trust. The very force that looked dangerous becomes the force that allows it to soar. The salmon swims upstream against currents that seem impossibly strong. Every instinct might suggest turning back, yet it keeps swimming because somewhere deep inside its nature is the understanding that growth often requires struggle. The seed pushes upward through heavy soil. It does not know how thick the earth above it may be. It only knows that growth demands movement. So it pushes and pushes and pushes again,
until finally a fragile green shoot reaches sunlight. Yet humans often try something different. We tell ourselves we will begin once we feel ready. We tell ourselves we will act when the timing is perfect. We imagine that confidence must come first and action must follow later. But this belief quietly traps many people for years. Let me tell you about someone you may recognize, perhaps even someone who reminds you a little of yourself. Imagine a person sitting alone late at night in a small room. The world outside is quiet. A single light glows over a desk. Maybe there is a notebook sitting there, blank and waiting. Maybe a laptop screen reflects softly in the dark. Inside this person's mind are dreams that feel almost too large to touch. Ideas about a life they wish they could live. Maybe they want to write a book that shares their story. Maybe they want to start a business that brings freedom. Maybe they want to learn a skill that could change their future. Maybe they simply want to become someone stronger, wiser, more confident than the person they feel they are today. Every year they whisper the same promise to themselves. I will start when the time is right. I will begin when I feel more confident. I will try when I finally understand everything. I will move when life becomes less chaotic. At first, this promise feels responsible, sensible even. But something curious begins to happen. Days quietly pass, weeks slip by, months fade into seasons. 1 year becomes 2, 2 years become 5, and the dream remains exactly where it began, sitting patiently in the corner of their mind. Now, imagine another person. This person is not necessarily more talented, not necessarily smarter. In fact, they might feel even more uncertain than the first person. But one day they do something very simple. They decide to begin anyway. They write the first messy paragraph. They record the first imperfect video. They attempt the first awkward step toward the life they want to live. At first, the results are not impressive. The progress feels slow, sometimes discouraging, sometimes embarrassing. But something fascinating begins to happen. Movement creates momentum. Each attempt teaches them something new. Each mistake becomes a lesson that waiting could never provide. Slowly, almost invisibly, they begin to change. Confidence starts to grow. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because experience replaces fear. What once looked impossible slowly begins to look manageable. This is one of the great secrets of personal growth. Confidence rarely arrives before action. Confidence grows during action. The people who seem fearless today were often the ones who started while feeling afraid. There is another truth hidden here that many people overlook: responsibility. When people hear that word, they often think of pressure or burden, but responsibility can also be freedom, because responsibility means your life is not entirely controlled by luck, by circumstances, or by other people's approval. It means that although you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can control what you do next. Imagine standing at the edge of a river. The water flows steadily past, shaping the landscape as it goes. At first, the rocks appear solid and unchanging. Yet over many years, the river slowly carves its path through them, not with explosive force, but with quiet persistence, drop by drop, day by day, year by year.
Your life can work in exactly the same way. Small actions repeated consistently begin to shape your future. One step today, another tomorrow, another next week. Each step seems small when you look at it alone, but together they create direction, they build momentum, they carry you forward. Another quiet truth about strength is that most people underestimate their own. Not because they lack strength, but because life has not yet required them to use it fully. Strength often appears only when it becomes necessary. Think about people who have rebuilt their lives after losing everything. Think about individuals who changed careers after failure. Think about someone who once doubted themselves, but eventually discovered courage they never knew existed. Before those moments, they may have believed they were weak, yet when the moment demanded strength, they discovered resilience hidden inside them. Strength rarely grows in comfort. It grows when challenges require us to stretch beyond what feels familiar. Now consider another belief that quietly shapes many lives: the idea of the perfect moment.
Have you ever told yourself, you will start when everything lines up perfectly, when you have more time, more clarity, more support, more certainty? It sounds reasonable, but life rarely arranges itself into perfect conditions. There will almost always be uncertainty. There will almost always be obstacles. There will almost always be reasons to delay. If a seed waited for perfect conditions before growing, it might remain buried forever. But the seed does not wait, it pushes upward through darkness and resistance until eventually it reaches sunlight. So what can you do with this realization? If nobody is coming to rescue your life, what should you do next? First, accept the truth gently. Your life belongs to you. Your future is shaped by the choices you make repeatedly over time. Second, start small, but start today. Do not wait for a dramatic moment of transformation. Write one page, learn one concept, practice one skill, send one message. Small actions create momentum. Third, replace waiting with curiosity. Instead of asking, "Am I ready?" ask, "What might I learn if I try?" Curiosity turns fear into exploration. Fourth, become your own guide. Ask yourself each day, what would the strongest version of me do today? Then try to take one step in that direction. As you begin to live this way, something interesting happens. The world begins to respond differently to you. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin to appear, not because someone arrived to save you, but because your movement created new possibilities. Life has a strange relationship with action. When you wait, the world often stays quiet, but when you move, even imperfectly, the world begins to shift around you. And so we return to the simple truth we began with. Nobody is coming to save you. At first, that sentence may feel heavy, but look again. If nobody is coming to rescue your life, it means nobody is required to grant you permission either. It means the beginning of your journey can start right now. Just like the tiny turtle crossing the sand toward the ocean, just like the seed pushing upward toward sunlight. You are not stuck. You are not powerless. You are not broken. You may simply have been waiting for a signal that was never meant to arrive. But the signal you were waiting for might actually be this realization itself. The moment you understand that no one is coming to rescue your life is the moment you realize that you are free to build it. You do not need to change everything overnight. You only need to begin. One step, one decision, one small movement toward the life you want to create. And over time, those steps will accumulate. They will shape your path. They will transform who you become. So pause for a moment and ask yourself a quiet question. What is one step I can begin today? Not tomorrow, not next year, today. If this message resonated with you, share the step you plan to take. I would genuinely love to hear it. And if you enjoy exploring reflections like this, the quiet wisdom hidden in life, nature, and the human journey, consider subscribing and joining me again. Because sometimes the most important discoveries we make are not found somewhere far away in the world. Sometimes they begin in a quiet moment like this, when we realize the life we've been waiting for has been within our reach all along, waiting for the courage to begin.